after coming back from space. There are 3 main ways you can use your PEMF device: as part of a routine before or after exercise to encourage faster recovery and soundness, to stimulate tissues and slow healing wounds of a ligament and injuries, or as a whole body treatment post-surgery. The PEMF can be very beneficial for both recovery and from injuries from promoting wellness and suppleness in the muscles. When used as part of a routine or before or after exercise, the PEMF can help the horse with post-work recuperation and lessen discomfort brought on by muscle strain. When used for healing an injury, it can speed the process along by encouraging the delivery of nutrients to the muscle. In summary, the PEMF can help assist your horse in training optimally, competing effectively, and recovering quickly from injuries and exertion. Whole body variants of equine cryotherapy. While localized cryotherapy is intended for spot treatment and fast results, whole body exposures result in systemic effects. There are 3 main usages for cryotherapy: treating an injury, rehabilitation for previous injuries, and preventing further injuries. To optimize its healing effects, it should be done within the first 48 hours of your horse's injury. And how it helps is basically cold therapy can be used during this period, and it helps repair broken blood vessels and quickly reduces inflammation. And inflammation is bad because it's basically what the main contributor or major factor in worsening your horse's pain. So when you can nip that in the bud, it's really beneficial to the horse and makes them more comfortable. To prevent tissue damage from extended exposure to cold, it's recommended that the horse get cold therapy for 20 minutes and then rest for 30 minutes, and this can be repeated every 24 hours. In addition to alleviating pain and inflammation, equine cryotherapy can include blood flow and circulation to the injured area, aiding in the healing process. And I don't know if you guys can tell, this is like the hoof of a horse, and there's so many veins and like blood vessels in the hoof, which I think is really cool. But basically, once your horse is back into work or cryotherapy is part of your maintenance, it's best used after strenuous work and showing. And some of the benefits of cryotherapy are muscle relief, pain relief, and anti-inflammatory effects. The blood that carries oxygen, hormones, and nutrients to the muscle is actively circulated immediately after the end of a session, which aids in hastening recovery and delivery of nutrients to the muscles. And the lovely Lynn has also brought in her cryotherapy machine. So I will be taking, I think, yeah, do you think 2 or 3, how much time do we have? Okay, I'll be taking 2 volunteers. The first one is Amaya, sorry, I hope you know. The first one is Amaya right here. And, well, it might be a little bit cold on your jacket and stuff, but you can, sure, Brad. Okay, it's cold, but it won't harm you.
It's not gonna hurt you.
Yeah.
So you saw in the video that Piper showed that there is a thermoregulator on the end of the therapy device. So it turns red if you stay on one spot too long, and it increases the chance of freezing. And so the blue light is what we're looking for, either no light or a blue light. So this is also a little bit loud.
That's pretty cool. All right, Brad.
So there's this is a fairly new technology, and there's a lot of NFL teams now that are using it in their locker rooms after
Horses, NFL
yeah.
players. Yeah.
Brad. It's
good.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So, yeah, wow, I realized that was all a lot, and I appreciate all of you so much for sitting through all that, especially as you watch your like friends and peers come up here and get cool devices tested on them, and you just had to sit and watch. But this past year has been such a difficult but amazing experience. Yeah, you saw all that. Whoops. This past year has been such a difficult but amazing experience, and I've learned so much, and I feel like I've come so far from where I've started, both in my knowledge and my riding. Every day that I work on this, I realize how much this topic actually interests me. Firstly, as I mentioned, my horse is like pretty self-destructive, and so learning to care for him and stuff like that is so important to me, as well as also, not as many of you know this, but ever since I was 3 years old, I've wanted to be a veterinarian, and doing a project like this makes me realize why. Learning to care for and heal something that you really care about, in my opinion, is one of the most rewarding things. And this project really helped me remember that passion, and all in all, it's been a super rewarding process. However, that process was not easy, and I had so many people supporting me throughout. First off, thank you, Jen. This whole year, but mostly these last couple weeks have been so crazy, and I sincerely apologize for every time you got on the document and emailed me at 10 p.m. at night asking where all the work I said I was gonna do was. Without your support, this project would not have been what it is. I would also like to thank my family, my parents, for supporting me in everything I do and pushing me to be the best person I can be. Thank you for the late night edits and then getting back up with me at 4 in the morning to go to the barn. And thank you to my sister. I know my schedule is crazy and exhausting, but you are genuinely the best and most supportive sister I could have ever asked for. Still a little bitter about your thanks, though. And finally, thank you so much, Lynn Collier.
Oh, wow. 20 years ago.
You are one of the most amazing horsewomen I know, and also one of the most generous and kind-hearted people. So thank you so much for helping me every step of the way through this project. And without your wisdom and guidance, I would have never been where I am today, and this project would have never been where it is today. But you've also given me so many opportunities in life, and for that I am so grateful. And thank you all for sitting through that, because that was a lot. All right.
Thank you.
Now, questions.
So this is the Q&A part of the Masterworks defense, and the first questions go to the advisory panel. So if you could, Scott, just pass that over.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Miss White, you have done an incredible job here, and even though I do sound rather draconian in my pressure that I gave you, you should know that this whole last week, Piper was dealing with a problem with her horse that needed attention, an abscess on its leg, that needed attention morning and night. So every day this week, during the last week of academics, she has been going into the barn on the 5:20 ferry, and after school going back to the barn after school in the middle. So kudos to you for, and I'm glad that this is your passion, because it certainly takes a passion to make you work that hard. My question for you is about nutrition.
Yes.
And I'm curious, there is a lot there that you have to regulate in a horse's nutrition. And I'm curious, horses being wild animals also, what is best for them? Just going out and foraging, or having us manipulate it by drying it, their food, drying it and keeping it all the different levels of nutrition and vitamins and supplements and all of that?
That's actually a really good question.
Thank you.
So it depends on so many factors. It depends on the horse. Like if they're a really picky horse, then you have to really control what they eat a bit more to make sure they're getting enough. And it also really depends on your location. Like in Ocala, Florida, that's a really big central for like horse racing and stuff like that. And a majority of the horses there are fed on the grass because the ground there is so nutrient rich that it's like really good for them to eat. But if you're in a location that has less nutrient rich grass, you might need to consider bringing in hay and supplements and stuff. And if your horse, like some horses are already don't have they can't really balance themselves as well. So it really is dependent on the horse and the location, as well as your like environment. Like if your horse, if you're living in a really cloudy place, you don't get a lot of sun, or your horse is inside all day, they need a vitamin D supplement. So it's really specific to each horse and environment and location and stuff. Does that answer it good?
It does, but I'm going to ask you an easy question too.
Okay.
What does Ivan eat?
Okay, so he eats 3 servings of Timothy hay and 1 serving of alfalfa a day. And then he also gets grain, beet pulp, flaxseed, and we're also putting him on visceral, and I think we're also putting him on a hoof supplement because he has bad feet. So he eats a lot of different stuff. He eats a lot of apples and carrots as well, which he's quite a fan of, and a lot of applesauce, which he's also quite a fan of.
Applesauce, I like that.
Okay. Miss White, congratulations. It was a lovely presentation.
Thank you.
I know how hard you've worked on this. And I know now as a horse owner, you're looking at this through different eyes. So my question is about therapies. How now, knowing what you know about therapies, as a horse owner, would you change what you do?
Well, I have had him for 3 months, so we're kind of slowly starting to incorporate things. But if I could, I would definitely add the beamer into my care program, especially because I kind of breezed past this, so I don't know if a lot of people heard it, but the improved microcirculation is really good for healing injuries, specifically like cuts and stuff, which he gets a lot of. And so if I could do, like, I would definitely want to add that to mine. And he already gets massage, and he gets shockwave, and cryo I would at shows and stuff like that. So he already gets most of the stuff that I talked about, but I would definitely want to add beamer and maybe chiropractic work as well. But it can get a little bit expensive, so.
It's true. It's
Yes.
true. All right, thank you very much. That was a great answer.
Okay, now questions. Do I pick them or do?
No problem.
Okay.
Right, questions from the floor. Maya, let's just go around here.
Great job. This one is probably the easiest question you'll ever get. What does Ivan look like?
Okay, so actually that's a great question because I love to talk about my horse. So I have like photos at the front, but we kind of skip them pretty quickly, but he is really big. He's 18 hands, which is like over 6 foot, I think. That's not him. This is him, and this is him, and that's him, and that is, and this one and this one. So it's called a chestnut, and he has like white feet and white strip on his face, and he's really sweet and cute, and I love him.
Well done, Miss White. That was a great presentation. I'm not a very horse expert. I don't really know a lot about horses, but I remember I think it was last year where hay was expensive and stuff, but I didn't know there were that many types of hay. I thought there was just one, and you were eating the hay. Okay, but so why was that very expensive? There was so many types of hay. Is it
So,
just
here in Canada, depending on your location, you can really only get access to certain kinds of hay because other kinds you have to bring in from very far away. But the main kinds of hay that we had here I didn't actually research this technically, but I can give you an answer. First of all, we had different diseases which were taking out the hay, and it gets more expensive to grow them with inflation and stuff. So my answer for you is disease and inflation.
Incredible job, Miss White. My question for you is, the other horse in your photo, Martin, at least, how is his care different from Ivan's? What did you do for him, and how was that different? Was it more stuff? Was it less stuff?
So it was definitely just a lot of different stuff. Martin is the white spotty horse that you can see in some of the photos, and I actually leased him from Lynn. And he was the first horse that I ever semi-owned kind of. And he was definitely a lot more sensible. So my horse gets a lot of injuries because he's kind of dumb and he doesn't know where his feet are. So I definitely spend a lot more time caring for Ivan and his injuries and stuff than I had to with Martin. But Martin also, Ivan has kissing spine, a very small amount, but he has a little bit, which means I have to care for that more than Martin because he didn't have any. But both of them actually have like a very small amount of arthritis in their fronts. So the care for that is kind of the same as well. As well as Martin got like a hay ball and a treat ball because he was a little bit spoiled, but in the best way possible. And Ivan doesn't because I don't trust him with them.
Hi, Miss White, I'm so impressed with your presentation, and you knew so much and you went so deep into your topic, and I'm very impressed by how scientific it was. My question is actually, what do you think is a modern day setback in equine care?
Okay, so there's not like, I can't really say a setback necessarily because we've really only made advancements, but there are in general, there's only really been advancements, but in people's personal lives, like things have definitely gotten a lot more expensive, which is really, it makes it harder for horses to maintain. And so sometimes certain parts of their care can be neglected because like the owners can't afford it. As well as definitely, especially more recently, like in the past 20 years, there's been like competitions have gotten a lot more aggressive, and so unfortunately in that higher, like really high level of competing, you can see some more practices that I don't necessarily agree with, and which is unfortunate for sure, because you know you want to see every animal being treated really well, but like these horses aren't necessarily being abused, it's just practices I don't necessarily agree with. So that's definitely like, there's definitely personal setbacks, but I wouldn't say as a whole of equine care we've had big setbacks in the past years.
Ms. White, fantastic presentation. Very, very detailed. I got probably 80%, I think. This question I'd like you to answer kind of broadly and your personal opinion, I guess. Like, you just explained, your horse gets better treatment than I do, by far. It's so expensive. I have a horse. It's crazy. Why horses? What is it about the horse? We don't ride them to work anymore. We don't use them to pull my stuff around. They just get to like look cool and be cool. Why do we spend so much on them? That's so much science and thought and effort and money and time and expenditure and cool gadgets for horses. Why? What's so special about horses?
Well, I definitely have a very biased standpoint, but I think they're like really cute and sweet, and I think first of all, there's a lot of, like if you want me to speak from what actual advantages we get from horses, there's a lot of horses used for like therapeutic programs and stuff like that, which can help with people who have disabilities and stuff like that. So horses that they're still technically working, and they're still doing a job, it's just a very different job. But from like a more athletic standpoint, I mean, some people, it's just like a sport that they love, and so that's why they've chosen it. And it's like working with a sports team, but your team doesn't talk to you, and you have to guess what they want. But
is there something special about the horse that's not like a sea cow or a goat?
Well, they're definitely a lot bigger, so they can support the weight of the person, and like riding them is actually really fun. Like you get definitely a bit of an adrenaline rush because you're like jumping and stuff like that, which is really fun. And it's definitely like, it's a really rewarding experience to work with horses, because when everything's right, it's like you can feel it and everything's really good and everything just goes really well. So you definitely put into them what you get back. So like if you're taking really good care of them, they give a lot back to you in just different ways, which I think for some people is really rewarding, and that's why they've chosen horses.
Thank you.
I don't know if that answers your question how you wanted, but
You've probably already answered this question, but are you thinking about becoming like a pro horse rider?
that's the goal, yeah. 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 So I do, there's like two main types of jumping. One is jumpers and one is hunters. And I do hunters, which is basically, in jumpers it's all about the time and faults and stuff like that. And in hunters, it's all about making the course look really like natural and effortless. And so you get points deducted for like making mistakes or stuff like that. And I don't know, I think hunters is really fun, so that's what I do.
I have a question for you. Well, first of all, we often hear that young people are just kind of skimming the surface of things these days. They don't have the ability to hold attention. We're all worried about social media and all the rest. And I think that the incredible depth you went to in this work just belies all of that. What an amazing presentation. Thank you. So my question for you, you wrote your paper on optimizing performance for horses.
Yes.
Since you started up this kind of regime for your horse, paying attention to nutrition and the massage and all the rest of it, have you noticed a difference in the performance of your horse and maybe even the relationship between you and your horse?
100%. So when we got him, he had previously had 2 years off, and basically he just sat in a stall. Like the owners didn't really pay attention to him. He got really inconsistent feeding, and his hooves are like, he wasn't neglected or abused. It just wasn't, they didn't go above and beyond to care for him. They just gave him the basic necessities. And so as he's come into our barn, I've seen his coat improve, I've seen his temperament improve. He has a couple behavioral problems when riding, so we're working through those, but I've definitely also seen a significant improvement in that. And when he came to us, because he's basically just sat around for 2 years, he has lost quite a bit of muscle. But in the 3 months alone, I've definitely seen an improvement in his body condition and in his coat and all of that. As well as, this is not necessarily from care, but just time spent together. But I've definitely grown closer to him, and I'd like to think that he likes me, but it's probably just treats. Yeah, pretty much. So yes, I would say have noticed an improvement in the past 3 months, and I hope to see more. So yes.
Thank you. Well,
Is there any more?
any other questions?
Oh.
One last question.
There's two,
then-
Storm and Maya.
No, we've got time for one more.
Okay.
And Maya, let's get the question started. There you go.
What? Thank you.
Okay, so in your presentation, you mainly talked about things like their diet and health and how to manage things like that. But I've heard things such as worms, and I'm interested if diet, nutrition, and these types of treatments used affect the chances of getting worms, or is that a completely separate thing?
The chances of getting what now?
Yeah.
Worms. Oh yes. So again, I didn't cover that as much, but I can still give you an answer. So the diet, not necessarily. I give my horse dewormer, he gets it every year, and that helps prevent it. But it's also just taking care of the environment. If they are pooping and stuff in their paddock, and then that goes into the ground and the grass grows out of it, it's just cycling the worms back through them. So you have to keep really good care of their paddocks, otherwise that can cause them to get worms. And diet, not necessarily, because it's not really in hay and stuff. So yeah, not really, but there is other stuff that you have to take care of to prevent them.
Thank you. Well, while we've been asking our questions, your panel has been deliberating, and I'm very happy to say that Piper White has completed all the requirements of the Masterworks. So we are going to take a lunch break. It is now 12:15, let's say 45 minutes. We'll be back here at 1 o'clock for the final Masterworks. Relax. for the final Masterworks presentation of today. Thank you very much, everybody.
No, Josh, don't do a stupid one. No, he's gonna do something really useless. 하지마, 하지마. Oh, but you haven't done your transitions?
I like the one about 1%.
아빠 물 떨어지니까 조심해.
We're all.
Thank you.
Hello, yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here for our fourth Masterworks presentation of the day. I'm going to do a bit of a longer introduction for people who are joining us on our live stream, and also for any guests that have come. We welcome you to this, which is our capstone project of the full 4 years that the kids have been here at Iowa Pacific School. So this project starts in September when the students pick their topic, and with the teachers' help, we massage it into something that's deep enough for some really good discoveries for the students to make. And they spend the entire year researching under the guidance of their Masterworks advisors, who are faculty members, but also external advisors, who we are really grateful that they volunteer with our grade 9 students and inspire and also guide our students on their journey. So the students have written a 15 to 40 page paper, and today is sort of a distillation of the best parts of that essay into hopefully a very manageable and easy to understand for this audience look into what it is that they study. So there is a few traditions that we have on this week, and they are that the students are called by their last name, and also this statue here is for good luck. They touch it as they come up, remember, and they will be doing a presentation for about 20 to 30 minutes, and then we will have a question and answer period, and then make an announcement about meeting the requirements of the Masterworks program. So I would love to have you welcome Miss Jua Park.
If everyone could stand up, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to answer, and I want you to think of the last 7 days. How many of you have exercised in the last week? Please remain standing if you have, and sit down if you haven't. How many of you have had a meatless meal 3 or more nights this week? Of the left standing, how many of you wear a helmet every time you bike? Well, if you are standing right now, congratulations, you have reduced your risk of Alzheimer's and engaged in activities that promote brain health. Hi, my name is Jua Park, and today I'm going to give you a presentation on reducing the risk, how to prevent the possibilities of Alzheimer's disease, which is a type of dementia, and what you can do in your everyday life. I've always been interested in the medical world, with K-dramas and Grey's Anatomy, along with my parents pressing the idea of me becoming a doctor early on in my life. And I had imagined I would do something in the medical realm for my Masterworks. However, I wanted a personal connection to this project. That's when I thought of my grandparents, who had passed away, and both their connection to dementia and Alzheimer's disease. They had the disease before they passed, and this made me question the risks for my parents and the early onset. That's when I decided to center my Masterworks around Alzheimer's and the potential risks. In this presentation, you will learn about an overview on Alzheimer's disease, specifically the early onset, the pathology, or in other words, the biological side of the disease and the treatment, my research question, and the do's, the don'ts, and the maybes. Now, the Alzheimer's overview. What is the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's disease?
The widespread belief that dementia and Alzheimer's are the same and can be used interchangeably is incorrect. Dementia is a general umbrella used to classify different neurodegenerative disorders, such as Alzheimer's, which makes about 50 to 75% of dementia cases, along with vascular dementia, 20 to 30%, Lewy body, 10 to 25%, and frontal temporal, or referred as FTD, 10 to 15%. Alzheimer's is one specific type of dementia under the larger umbrella term. Now, a quick background on Alzheimer's disease. It was founded by this guy, or known as Alois Alzheimer. He's a German scientist and discovered the disease in 1906 after noticing something unusual about a patient's brain who had symptoms like memory loss and disorientation. This then became known as Alzheimer's disease. All right, now I want you to look at this photo, and if I were to ask you to assume one person in this photo has Alzheimer's disease, I'm going to guess it would be this person. But what if I actually said it was this woman? My presentation will be mainly focused on early onset Alzheimer's disease, which can be referred as EOAD. The current definition of EOAD is when individuals develop Alzheimer's before the age of 65. If symptoms occur in people over 65, they're considered to have late onset Alzheimer's disease, LOAD. 65 is the cutoff age due to the large majority of people being diagnosed later in life. Now, you might be wondering, what are the symptoms of Alzheimer's? There are a number of symptoms and not everyone will experience them as it is very case-by-case dependent. But generally the symptoms include memory loss, difficulty remembering recent events, conversations or newly learned information, difficulty finding the right words, struggling to recall names or objects, trouble with spatial reasoning, difficulty judging distances or getting lost in familiar places, changes in personality, becoming more withdrawn, anxious or irritable, and disengagement from social activities, avoiding social gatherings and hobbies. Now, to understand Alzheimer's disease slightly more, we will take a look at the pathology, which means the cause and the origin of the disease. There are several hypotheses to what leads to Alzheimer's. However, I will not be going into that in my presentation. Instead, I'll be focusing on the hallmarks of Alzheimer's pathology, which can be beneficial in understanding the risk factors. Now, I won't lie, this section is quite heavy, so bear with me, but we can get through it. It'll make the rest of the presentation easier to understand. Firstly, the amyloid beta protein plays a role in the communication between neurons, which is essential for learning and memory. It's like a phone call. However, when amyloid beta is abnormally produced, it becomes problematic, which causing that phone call to be disrupted. A lot of different factors I will mention later will contribute to the amyloid beta buildup. The amyloid beta protein comes from the amyloid precursor protein. When it produces the protein, it also creates fragments called amyloid peptides and eventually becomes plaques, which can be seen in Alzheimer's disease brains. The next hallmark is the tau protein. This is found inside cells. This is a healthy neuron, and in the cell there are microtubules, and the tau is what keeps this together. It stabilizes microtubules, which are hollow-like tube structures found in the cytoplasm of plant and animal cells. Stable microtubules are crucial for maintaining cell structure, enabling cell division, and helping transport other proteins. They are found in neurons. There's a process called phosphorylation, and this makes sure that the tau is working properly. It is essential for healthy brain function. However, when the tau protein does not work properly, the tubes destabilize, causing the protein to clump together to form tangles called neurofibrillary tangles. You might be thinking of these things, but it's more like this, the orange tangle on the neuron. The neurofibrillary tangles interfere with the stability and the function of microtubules in neurons, restricting the transport of essential proteins and disrupting communication. If the neurons can't communicate, they don't work and eventually die. And this neuronal degeneration and death is a very important aspect of Alzheimer's progression. So, now that you know what happens in the brain, I will describe what the diagnosis process is like. So, how does someone become diagnosed with Alzheimer's? It starts with family members noticing the initial symptoms, as I previously mentioned. Once the patient has been referred to a neurologist, the initial steps of the diagnosis will begin. I got the amazing opportunity to go to the UBC neurology department. And how do I know that's the neurology department? They even put neurons on the building. I met a neurologist who meets and diagnoses patients with Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia on a daily basis. Dr. Yara Alcoder walked me through her daily life. So first, she would observe the patient starting in the waiting room. So next time you're at the doctor's, make sure to be hyper aware that they're watching you even in the waiting room. When Dr. Alcoder calls the patient, she is immediately assessing their level of independence, as things as little as noticing their name has been called and how confidently they walk towards her. She first starts with a daily living questionnaire, such as recent symptoms they've been experiencing, and this interview involves the patient's family. She then proceeds with an examination, such as a gyrocognitive exam, to observe categorizing objects, simple math, remembering instructions, and retaining simple information. Other tests include mini mental state examinations that cover some similar information. Once a neurologist makes an initial assumption of Alzheimer's, they then test for cerebral spinal fluid, or CSF. CSF is procured by a lumbar puncture, more commonly known as a spinal tap. They stick a needle into your spine to take out the spinal fluid to test for amyloid beta and tau biomarkers. It will then go to the lab testing to see the results. To get a confirmed diagnosis of Alzheimer's, the biomarkers will look like a seesaw. So, amyloid likes to be high and tau likes to be low. But if tau is high and amyloid is low, no one is happy. And that analogy can represent the imbalance that suggests the presence of Alzheimer's. If the results come back with an indication of Alzheimer's, there can be another initial scan called the magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI. There is a very fancy and nice MRI in the UBC neurology department, and it looks like this. This scan can be helpful to reveal any structural changes in brain atrophy or shrinkage of certain areas. So, this is a healthy brain compared to an Alzheimer's diseased brain. You can see the brain atrophy or the shrinkage around the perimeter of the brain and the enlarged ventricles compared to the healthy brain. All right. In most cases, more than one type of dementia is present. It is a combination of multiple dementias called mixed dementia. For example, a patient can have vascular dementia, which impacts memory, behavior, and different parts of the brain negatively, affected due to the blockage and damage to blood vessels in the brain. And you can see here the Alzheimer's diseased brain and the mixed dementia, which has vascular and Alzheimer's together. There is significant brain atrophy, as well as white matter along the edges of the ventricle. So this is due to the vascular dementia having more inflammation and fluid from the blockage in the blood vessels. At this moment, there is no cure for Alzheimer's. There are several drugs approved to treat the symptoms of Alzheimer's. Focus on the word symptoms. Again, there is no cure. There are some that can be used at any stage of Alzheimer's to reduce the symptoms. Some drugs are used to mild to moderate, and some for severe. Recently, there have been 3 drugs that have been controversially approved called the monoclonal antibody, a synthetic protein created to specifically target disease, MAB. The MABs are symptomatic drugs recommended in the early stages of Alzheimer's. This is the current approved drug, though clinical trials and more research is being conducted. When I started writing my paper, I wanted to do a general research paper on early onset Alzheimer's disease. However, my external advisor, Dr. Hyunwoo Lee, advised me to create a formal research paper following the proper steps. He helped me realize that I was being way too broad, and because I could go on and on about Alzheimer's far longer than 40 pages. So I was told to create a specific research question. After my visit at the clinic with interviews and a lot of reading, I created my question. Additionally, when dealing with a disease that has no cure, it can sometimes be hard to remain positive. So for my project, I wanted to focus on things that people have control over, or a sense of agency. So my research question is, what are the factors within our control that help prevent the risk of early onset Alzheimer's disease? This is an urgent question because globally, the Alzheimer's disease population has predicted to nearly triple by 2050. And right now, over 55 million people are living with Alzheimer's. This causes a burden on healthcare costs and an increase in illness and disability. So why does this matter to you? You may have older family members, and this information can be helpful. And starting today, possessing the knowledge can help reduce your own risk of developing Alzheimer's in the future. Understanding the unmodifiable and modifiable risk factors before diagnosis can be beneficial for many different aspects of your health and a better quality of life if you were to get Alzheimer's. And a quick side note, when writing a research paper, it is required to inform the readers how you got this information and your procedure. So what I did was I read a variety of review articles, such as epidemiological studies, which analyze the disease and their cause in populations. An important part of these studies that helps me on this topic is they isolate the different factors and focus on the amount of risk. And it is especially important in studying Alzheimer's because it can show the big, significant risk factors. And Alzheimer's is changing all the time. To stay up to date, I looked at articles from the past 10 years. The amount of disappointment when I saw an article that was so perfect for what I needed to research, and just to find out it's from 1999. Not very recent. All right. Now, what are the modifiable and unmodifiable risk factors? I will define these 2 terms as I will be referring to them a lot. Unmodifiable factors are risks that cannot be altered. Modifiable risk factors can be defined as preventable and changeable factors that you have control over in your life. I will start with the bad news first. Unfortunately, there are factors that humans cannot change, and well, these suck. But it is important to be aware of them. To be aware of these factors allows people to engage in early intervention, activities, and actions to decrease your risk. There are quite a few factors to consider, and I will focus on age, genetics, and gender. And just to preface, if you happen to fit these factors, it does not mean you will develop Alzheimer's. Now, put your hand up if you're planning to age. All right. The largest unmodifiable risk factor of Alzheimer's disease is age, a natural, irreversible process that no one is immune to at the moment. Age affects various organs and cell systems, a slow decrease in brain volume and weight, and memory loss. In addition to a natural cognitive decline with age, further factors such as depression, high cholesterol, and slowing of metabolism also increase your risk. In the brain specifically, as you age, amyloid beta buildup can occur in the brain naturally due to aging. This happens in people with Alzheimer's and people without, making the diagnosis process extra difficult. While there's nothing you can do about aging, you want to be in the best possible health. Next, a modifiable risk factor is genetics. Approximately 70% of Alzheimer's disease cases are contributed by genetic factors. However, this does not mean you will get the disease, there's just an increase in risk. The major gene mutations that are associated with early onset include amyloid precursor protein, which has one protective mutation out of 25 damaging ones, presenilin 1 and presenilin 2, which both negatively impact the disease, and apolipoprotein E. And this has one harmful form of the protein, apolipoprotein E4. As gene technology increases with the ability to pinpoint specific gene mutations, we will better understand how to diagnose and treat early onset. This is good news because in your lifetime, hopefully, there will be a big breakthrough in reducing the genetic risk factor. These genes and mutations cause different things such as amyloid beta or tau buildup, neuroinflammation, cerebral/hippocampal atrophy, which affect memory and learning, and overall they inhibit brain function in some way. The risk of birth gender is important to note because the makeup of humans differs between men and women. Approximately 2/3 of AD patients are women. Women live longer by about 4.5 years, and there are more women over the age of 85 than men. This combination of age and gender can be significant for female individuals. If you're living a longer life, you're more likely to develop age-related diseases, as well as structural differences that increase your risk for females. These include brain structure, biomarkers, responding to stress, pregnancy, menopause, hormones, and more. Though with all that being said, I'm referring to late onset Alzheimer's disease for this section. For early onset Alzheimer's, the risk is generally the same as far as we know. So not to scare the women in the room, there's no greater risk for early onset, only late onset. Therefore, the more preventative measures taken, the better, and that goes for everyone. Modifiable risk factors can be defined as preventable and changeable factors that you have control over in your life. If an individual is aware of their personal and modifiable risk factors, it is important at any age to be proactive by controlling the modifiable factors. These modifiable factors I will be discussing are generally common health practices advised by many. In this section, I will divide the factors I researched into 3 groups: the do's, the don'ts, and the maybes. I'll start with the don'ts, but before diving into my research, let's see what you think. Raise your hand if you have an idea of something you shouldn't do that could increase your risk of Alzheimer's. Kai? Yeah? Well, you shouldn't get hurt, your brain, yep. That. Alan? Yeah? Maya? Yeah? Max? Yeah? All right, so, sorry. Great, now here's a list of things that you shouldn't avoid: alcohol consumption, poor sleep, social isolation, metal exposure, air pollution exposure, neglecting heart health, traumatic brain injury, and smoking. Now I will be covering 4 different factors: alcohol consumption, smoking, traumatic brain injury, and metal exposure. These are things you want to avoid to reduce your risk. Starting with alcohol consumption, it has never been largely recommended. As for Alzheimer's disease, well, isn't great either, as it is a neurotoxin, meaning it's like poison for your nervous system. While alcohol is not good for your brain, one of the main considerations is the quantity and heavy drinking, which is associated with the most risk. Alcohol has many damaging effects, as it can lead to neuroinflammation, increasing amyloid beta accumulation, and more. It is also linked to your brain shrinking or cerebral atrophy and decreased brain volume. Have I scared you enough? Unlike heavy drinking, moderate and light drinking are not as easily correlated with Alzheimer's risk. However, it does have an impact on your brain and other parts of the body. Next, in a similar sense, is smoking, and I reviewed studies that stated smoking intoxication increases your risk. They divided the participants into non-smokers, quit smokers over 9 years, recently quit less than 9 years, and current smokers. This study resulted in non-smokers and individuals who had quit for longer than 9 years having no increase in risk for Alzheimer's. For current and smokers and recently quit smokers, there was an increase in risk. Meaning, if you quit for less than 9 years, your risk is equivalent to current smokers. Therefore, the earlier the quit, the better. Honestly, the best thing to do is just don't smoke. Problem solved. All right, now, the next thing to refrain from are head injuries, and it may seem obvious. However, a lot of individuals are involved in sports, especially physical ones, such as skiing, snowboarding, hockey, and they can all lead to brain injuries or concussions. 1 or 2 concussions will not increase your risk of Alzheimer's, though repeated head injuries can eventually lead to what is called chronic traumatic encephalopathy. It is a traumatic brain injury. The point being made here is traumatic brain injury can intensify the risk of Alzheimer's with accumulation of other factors. For instance, chronic traumatic encephalopathy and cerebrovascular dysfunction, which is a condition that doesn't allow blood to flow to the brain, can all lead to amyloid beta and tau buildup, as well as inflammation after traumatic brain injury occurs. Traumatic brain injury is more preventable if aware at a young age, so wear your helmets. Another don't involves the exposure or the overconsumption of metals. Lead and aluminum are toxic metals for human beings, and it can add to your risk of Alzheimer's. This has been known for a while, and toxic metals are eliminated in various products. However, with pollution, you may still be exposed to them. It is important to be cautious of lead-based paint and aluminum in your water, as they can harm your brain and lead to Alzheimer's pathologies, so don't go near toxic metals. Moving on to the maybes, or in medical terms, this would be confounding factors, which essentially means it is associated with both the dependent and independent variables, so the factor can contribute to both Alzheimer's disease and other modifiable risk factors. For instance, cardiovascular disease has a set of risk factors, some including high cholesterol, sleep apnea, meaning having trouble breathing while sleeping, and kidney disease. And then there is Alzheimer's disease, which some specific to the disease include traumatic brain injury, as we talked about, and depression. But there are also many shared factors, which can include diet, smoking, hypertension, diabetes, and so on. Therefore, when cardiovascular disease is researched to see if it is a cause of Alzheimer's, it is difficult to determine if it directly affects your risk of Alzheimer's. The confounding factors I researched were cardiovascular disease, hypertension or high blood pressure, diabetes, and depression. I've called these the maybes because of the uncertainty. Additionally, they are all pre-existing medical conditions, and it may seem difficult to control. However, unless it was a condition since birth, it is always beneficial to take preventative measures at any point in time. If you're listening to this and think some of these apply to me, remember, just because you have diabetes or high blood pressure, you are not guaranteed to get Alzheimer's. Same goes for genetics. If you find that you have the gene, you might or might not get it. There is no definitive answer. Now, moving on to things you can do. This is the exciting part of my project, as you can actually take action. But to make this a little more engaging, I'm going to do a quiz. I need one member of every house to answer a question. Now, this is going to be based on the dues of my project. So, if you're in Cassiopeia and feel like you'd like to answer a question, please raise your hand. All right, Wyatt, please stand up and answer the question loudly. If you do not know the answer to this question, you can ask another person from your house to act as the call your friend option. Okay, true or false? The more education you engage in, the lower the risk of Alzheimer's. True? Yes, the more education and mentally stimulating activity, the better. All right, now, stand up if you've gone through elementary school. All right, stay standing if you have or are going through middle school. Sit down if you haven't. Now, how many of you graduated from high school? Lastly, who has done any type of school beyond high school? Well, I would like to say congratulations, you will not get Alzheimer's. Okay, just kidding. But what if I told you school is actually good for you? I know it seems obvious, but the more school you do, the better. The more Sudokus, word puzzles, anything that challenges your brain is beneficial. So keep learning. All right, moving on to Orion. Moving on to Orion. Maya. All right. Remember, if you do not know the answer, you can ask someone else in your house. What percent from 0 to 100 do you think physical activity helps in lowering the risk of Alzheimer's? Like it reduces it by 50, 30, 80, whatever. Take a guess. Ooh, close. It was found to lower the risk of dementia by 57%. Staying active by playing sports, running, walking, cycling, even gardening can all be beneficial. Engaging in physical activity cannot increase your risk. It can only protect you. Now, Pleiades. All right, Rowan, stand up. Does hearing loss increase or decrease your risk of Alzheimer's? Yes, the answer is hearing loss increases your risk of Alzheimer's. This was surprising and unexpected, as I wasn't even aware this was a risk factor. But hearing loss isn't good for your Alzheimer's risk. This can be a pre-existing condition. However, 1/3 of people over the age of 55 develop hearing loss. There is a major increase in risk of Alzheimer's if you have specifically age-related hearing loss. Additionally, a common result of hearing loss is social isolation, depression, and overall lower quality of life, which can all directly correlate with Alzheimer's risk factors. Fortunately, the help of a hearing aid has shown significant decrease in risk. Therefore, when you all become, old, and if you start to lose your hearing, the best course of action would be to get a hearing aid or somehow treat the hearing loss. All right, finally, Andromeda. Amaya. Right. True or false? Meat is a good thing to eat against the risk of Alzheimer's. Oh, the answer is false. All right, now there are a few different diets you should be aware of. The Western diet. It consists of high amount of ultra-processed foods, fats, and importantly meat, but low intakes of fruits, vegetables, grains, and nuts. This diet can be seen commonly in North America. The next is the Mediterranean diet that focuses on fish, olive oil, cereals, fruits, vegetables, and nuts, and small amount of meat. The dietary approaches to stop hypertension, or DASH diet, emphasizes grains, fruits, vegetables, nuts, and a minimized salt intake, with moderate fish and poultry, and limits red meats, sweets, and saturated fats. One of the key concepts is red and processed meats. It can increase your risk of Alzheimer's. A diet that is high in fats and meat both increase your risk of developing Alzheimer's and correlates strongly to obesity. Obesity is a risk factor for many confounding factors of Alzheimer's, such as cardiovascular disease. So eating a Mediterranean or DASH diet with lower amounts of meat is a healthy choice, and perhaps the healthiest of all is a vegetarian diet. Diet is a crucial part in changing your risk, and in my opinion, one of the easier ways to take action. So much so that scientists created the Mediterranean DASH intervention for neurodegenerative delay, or MIND diet, which prioritizes olive oil, fish, whole grains, berries, greens, nuts, and beans, while minimizing red and processed meats, pastries, and fried foods, as well as ideas from the plant-based diet. So, when possible, make a healthy choice. Awareness is the first step in prevention. The medical view of the disease is an undeniable aspect. However, increasing public awareness and education is just as crucial, especially when it comes to early onset and modifiable risk factors. It's important for everyone, regardless of age, to understand their personal health risks and take proactive steps. Even if you're in grade 6 or 7 with no hearing loss or cardiovascular issues, your lifestyle choices still matter. Physical activity and a healthy diet and staying mentally engaged can all help reduce the risk. Just as public knowledge about heart health has grown through education, the same level of attention is needed for Alzheimer's. Looking ahead, access to information on genetic testing and personal risks should be more widely available. Understanding those risks can help you act early. So, stay conscious, alert, and informed. We can all take meaningful steps, starting now, to help prevent or delay the onset of Alzheimer's disease. All right. All right, I would like to thank Amanda Zappo, my faculty advisor, the one who helped me finish my Masterworks paper and presentation, even with all my procrastination. My external advisor, Hyunwoo Lee, who helped me understand so many different aspects of my project, like finding the countless articles, making a research proposal, and setting a tour for interviews for me. Thank you. Jennifer Hendrickson, the person who gave us a friendly reminder, not so friendly reminder, that due dates were coming up and who would give us the reality check. Thank you. I would like to thank my parents and who helped me generate ideas with my topic back in September. I would also like to honor my fellow grade 9s who had to go through this. We made it together, and thank you for making me feel not completely behind. And a shout out to the people I interviewed at UBC, Dr. Yara Alcoder, the neurologist who gave me a lot of insight in the diagnosis process, a psychometrist who administers many tests for case studies, Maletta, along with the research coordinator, Jessica Luke, as well as my English tutor, Jen Clark, who helped me manage my stress and who planned out everything with me when I first came up to her with this huge year-long project called Masterworks in the summer. And finally, thank you for coming to my Masterworks presentation and your participation. Thank you for everything, everyone. Oh, I forgot. I forgot I have 2 questions.
As Ms. Park has said, we are now onto the question period, so we are going to hand it over to her advisor first.
I think you just speak.
All right.
Yeah.
Right, so,
It's not a mic, it's for our online.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, congratulations on a great presentation, Ms. Park. And it was very engaging and very clear, very focused, and it was very informative. This actually reflects a lot of dedication and very much hard work. And I very congratulate again for the excellent job.
Yeah.
So I actually have 2 questions. So at the beginning of the project, one thing we discussed was that every research starts with a question and ends with new questions. And usually the new questions usually stem from the most interesting find you make from the project. So in that sense, I wanted to ask you, what is the most interesting thing you found during this project? And second question is, if you were to continue on this Alzheimer's research, what kind of new questions you want to answer that builds upon this research?
Thank you. And I think the most interesting thing I learned, and I mentioned this in my presentation, is hearing loss has a risk factor. Like, I didn't even begin to think that this was a risk factor, but after looking into it, it makes a lot of sense because when you have hearing loss, you use different parts of the brain. And it was found that in the right temporal lobe, which is responsible for nonverbal communication, that there was a lot of brain atrophy and like loss of brain weight and volume. And so I think that was the most interesting thing for me, and I think it was just very cool. And the second part was what I want to do further. And in the beginning, I originally said, like I said, I wanted to do early onset Alzheimer's disease, a very basic presentation on that, but it's not very basic, as I realized. But I wanted to do some things on genetics. And I think because I've done the modifiable risk factors, I think I kind of want to move to the unmodifiable and look into the genetics a little bit more. I think that's my question.
Yeah, so that's a very important topic. So I encourage you to do it.
Thank you, Ms. Park. You took a topic that's probably not on the minds of most people in this room and made it super relatable, very informative, and gave us a sense of agency, which is really important. My question is a bit about your process. So you, in your paper, which a lot of your paper is not in the presentation because it was very in-depth, you had 6 or 7 pages of references. So in order to write a formal research procedure proposal, you did a lit review. Can you talk a little bit about what is a lit review and what was your process of research?
Right, so literature review is basically you get like scholarly articles that are like at least 10 pages long really most of the time, and you read it and you summarize it and you condense it into, and that's what I did in my main findings section of my paper. And so it was a lot of reading, I think, like weeks, like months of reading. But it was also like, I spent a lot of my time finding articles that I needed to like see on like Google Scholar and PubMed Central to make sure it was up to date and make sure it was like scholarly, I guess. As well as Hyunwoo asked me to do a research proposal, and that was really, I think it was really insightful. The research proposal like included a lot of like what I needed to do very concisely, and that also required like a couple weeks of reading before I could write that research proposal. But yeah, that was my kind of process.
Right.
It took a while.
And I was impressed because you had your iPad and you had notes on one document and you had it all sort of organized over multiple documents. Has this process made you want to do this more or less?
I think I do want to do it, maybe just not on this large of a scale, like maybe just like a couple pages, like not maybe not like 40. But yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And you must have got some tips on how to read articles effectively.
Yeah, I wasted time. Like even though I knew I was only supposed to read the intro and the conclusion and skim over, I still wasted time thinking I needed to read this. Really find articles that are straight to what you actually need to research.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Ms. Park.
Oh gosh.
Lots of questions from the floor. So first we'll go to some grade 9s.
Amazing presentation, Ms. Park. It was so informative, and you did a really good job explaining a really complex topic in a way that like everybody can understand, so that was amazing. My question for you is there a difference, like besides age, in late onset Alzheimer's and early onset Alzheimer's?
Yes, so there is, other than age, because so early onset Alzheimer's can be a little bit more unpredictable as it is less common, and it can act a lot more aggressively and lead to a shorter survival time for those individuals because it progresses a lot faster. And it was found to have a lot more like amyloid beta buildup and neurotic plaques and a whole bunch of that. But it was also, as I mentioned, mixed dementia. So late onset is more prone to have mixed dementia for individuals. But for early onset, it was found to just be like just Alzheimer's alone, not with vascular, not with FTD, but just Alzheimer's. So yeah, so that's the difference.
That was such a good presentation, Ms. Park. It was so clear and it was so clear and informative, and it was so like engaging, and it was funny at all the right parts. Great job. My question for you is, you talked about how you wanted to become a doctor a little bit. Do you think you'd go into like studying Alzheimer's and stuff like that, and you'd become a doctor in that region?
Yes. So when I went to the UBC clinic and I met Yara, Dr. Yara Alco there, and I thought it was so cool because she was socially, like she was talking to patients hands-on, like she was talking to them and talking to them directly, but also doing like she herself did the cerebrospinal fluid, like the lumbar punctures, and I think that was really cool. And I even did that for my French interview thingy. I did as a neurologist, and so I think that would be a cool area to look into because originally I thought neurologists were just like consulting patients, but after meeting her, it seemed very like it seemed a little bit more hands-on. So I thought, yeah, I think that would be a cool area to go into.
Miss Park, fantastic job. I'm so impressed. Your presentation was so clear and engaging, but it was also really thoughtful, and I'm very impressed. I was just wondering, what do you think individuals and organizations and even governments can do to engage community and individual prevention?
I think just doing more awareness all the time, like in like promoting Alzheimer's Day, as I put that on my screen. I don't think anyone knows about Alzheimer's Day. Like I didn't even know this myself. I didn't know about Alzheimer's Week or anything of that, or Alzheimer's Month. Just more awareness of like doing preventative actions, and maybe doing a week of like, oh, like the government or community center could be like, everyone do like preventive measures. And these preventative measures aren't even like crazy and outrageous things. They're like physical activity, diet. Like those are things that you can inform everyone on a daily basis. and everyone can do. And so I think just like doing that, even in our school, like we could do like, you know how we have heart week or whatever, heart health, you know, all of that. And a lot of them directly correlate to cardiovascular diseases, so it's like a wide range of diseases and stuff. So yeah, I think there's a lot of ways.
Great presentation. My question is, you were talking about how smoking had an effect on your risk of Alzheimer's. Does vaping have a similar effect?
I would assume so. So what my article that I read was primarily focused on cigarette smoking, but I don't doubt that vaping has similar effects, as many other articles state like vaping and smoking are like the similarities. So yeah, I think, yeah.
That was an amazing presentation, Miss Park. I was wondering if you were to become a doctor and like continue on as like a serious career, would you be focused on making a cure for the
disease? Yeah.
Disease?
Yeah. I think instead of the cure aspect, I would do more of the treating. But I would still like love to be involved with the cure and development of that. But instead of being, I don't know how to say, like stuck in a lab, like I would like to like interact with patients. So that's more of what I like loved about the neurologist career. Yeah.
Great job, Mrs. Hurtbat. Does like inhaling the smoke from smoking have like a difference, or is it just like actually smoking?
I think it's less about like the act of like smoking, it's more of the duration of smoking, like how long you do it and how long it affects your brain. Because like, I don't think like if you just inhale like one bit of smoke is going to completely change your risk. I think it's just the duration of how long and how consistent and heavy you do smoking or drinking with the same thing, because it's like more like over a long period of time that it'll affect your brain. And so that's what it's like. Quit smokers, like people who quit for a long time compared to the non-smokers had the same risk, meaning like you don't want to, like when they were evaluated, the risk was found the same. But then for current smokers and people who had only quit for like a couple years, the risk was the same. So you want to like avoid smoking, I think. Because like, or for a long period of time is the big key concept there.
If you had more time for this project, what would you do and why would you do it?
So I think I didn't cover every single modifiable risk factor out there, and I think I could have gone a lot more. Like I've done, like if I did a little bit more on air pollution and more environmental stuff, I think that would have been more interesting as well, because I missed about like sleep as well, and so the why would just probably still be the same. I would just continue with the modifiable risk factors. But if I had the chance to redo it, like not redo it, but do another one, it would be on genetics. It would be separate, yeah.
Congratulations, Ms. Parks. I understand that your paper had a lot more detail than your very detailed presentation. I'm wondering if part of what you were researching, this relates to my personal experience. My father passed away from dementia, and I recall in those final kind of years that, and maybe some leading up to it too, I think when you're watching somebody suffer from the disease, there's lots of things that I observed, and one of the things that I wonder if you found any information was like the tendency for the friend or the family member to fill in the gaps and to answer questions and to do the work that seems to be so challenging for the person who's suffering to process. And I wonder if that's helpful or not. Like I was guilty of that. Like I'd sort of answer, and maybe I should have been more patient and let my father answer.
That is a hard question, because I think as much as you want to help them or leave them to be independent, it's really hard to find that balance. So I think just doing because if you're already kind of diagnosed with Alzheimer's, I'm going to assume that it's already progressing, and more like cognitive activity might be beneficial in slowing it down. Though I don't think it will I don't know. I'm unsure about that question. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it is tough.
It's a little difficult.
But
yeah.
I think what I heard you say is that slowing it down, and maybe when you're on that side of it, you got to be more patient with people and let them have more time to process. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ms. Park. you've talked a lot about, well, this Alzheimer's comes across as a sort of an old person's disease, even if you're talking about early onset. But I'm wondering, for people your age, being informed about some of these things, are sort of sound diet and things like that, have you become more aware of your own health, particularly mental health and things like that? And do you change your behaviors at this age?
I would love to assume I do, but I think it has been more aware of like just meat consumption, and I've like known like the meat risks, and I don't eat like overly a lot of meat. But honestly, just keeping up with my physical activity, just like knowing that I'm doing things that are good, is like kind of like, as I was researching, like, oh, I do physical activity, oh, I do this, I do that, oh, I don't have hearing loss. Yeah, I think so, and I think, yeah. And I was even talking to my grandparents about it, and I was like, oh my God, you're doing so good, because like my grandma does these like writing books every single day, like these like cognitive activities, and I'm like, oh my God, Grandma, that's so good, you're doing great. So I think, yeah, informing others, yeah.
Shucks, I hope you were going to say, no, I was going to study harder and harder and harder. That's the message for everyone.
Well, you know, I like to get out sometimes.
Thank you. Yep.
More questions?
Oh, Carrie in the back,
Amazing work, Miss Park. This is truly like master's or even like PhD level work. And I know because I got tons of your Go Guardian flags from articles that you were reading, and I snuck a peek at a few of them and was like, I do not understand what is going on here at all. So super impressive that you could, you know, digest all of this literature and really sift through like what was relevant to you, what was not. Amazing work. I'm really curious to know, like, what did you learn about yourself as a learner through this process?
That I like to leave things at the last moment. I think I learned, originally when I came across this project, I was like, I don't want to do the heavy amount of research, like that's not what I want to do. But as I was reading, like I didn't absolutely despise like the highlighting, the reading, the understanding. And so I think like I was like more like, this is actually kind of interesting at one point, though it was a lot. So I think I discovered like kind of my patterns when I'm researching or reading and stuff. And yeah, and I think I became a faster reader, like just a wee bit. Yeah, not like deep, but.
Truly, truly incredible, Miss Park. I now understand why you have been reading for Masterworks during your English reading time all year. My question for you is, I have read in the past that small adjustments in your day, like taking a different route to work, or switching hands when you use your toothbrush, or trying a different method when you're cooking, if you're doing it regularly, can really prevent Alzheimer's or other neurodegenerative disease later in life. And I really do this every day, so can you use science to either validate or invalidate me in that?
I think that you are challenging your brain in a different way every single time you do that, or you're changing the toothbrush. I've heard of those things as well. And cognitive activity, like cognitive decline was like something that they measured in every single research article, like every single time. And so just doing more cognitive activity is like so beneficial, I think, and just like keeping your brain up to date instead of doing the same thing over and over. So. Go Lily!
Oh, sure, and then Maya.
Oh yeah, sorry. Just to add on to that question then, because you mentioned that Alzheimer's is predicted to like triple in the next while, so are we in like a cognitive decline crisis, or what is happening in our world that's happening?
I think people are just not aware of these little things that they can be doing, or out of like I don't think a lot of people knew that it was going to triple right now until I told you about that. And so I don't know if we're in like a crisis, but I do think we need to take action and take steps, and everyone can do those things. Yeah.
That was a great presentation, and it was really interesting. I have a question. Do you think that climate change will affect Alzheimer's later on? Like if it's better or worse, and how?
That is a cool question. I don't think I've ever thought about that. Like maybe with air pollution, like I don't know, with like the environmental aspect of it. Like if you're in a different environment than another person, you might be increased like risk. So yeah, I think that is a cool thing to look into. But yeah, maybe. I think so.
Do you think that like with all of like the scrolling we're doing nowadays would have any effect on Alzheimer's because like I know like I'll scroll for a little while and then I'll like walk into another room to do something and I'll like forget what I'm doing because my attention span is that short now. Do you think that'll like affect it?
I do, and I am a person who does a lot of scrolling as well. But I do think that does affect it because your brain is not actually doing anything. Like you're just watching and watching and watching. I'm not entirely sure if there's like really big harm. Do you know? Would you know? Oh, social isolation, that is a big one, yeah. So like if you aren't meeting your friends or like all that stuff, you're not interacting with people, that's also, it can be a risk factor that I didn't cover, but that is also a risk factor. So staying home and just scrolling is a thing.
Wonderful presentation. But does like not like alcohol in specific, but like any other like beverages that like affect it?
Well, I think high sugar intake or high like fat intake is also a big thing about diet, along with like just unhealthy like fast foods and stuff. So I don't know about particularly a beverage, but I don't think like sugar will decrease your risk is what I will say. Yeah, as far as I know.
Okay, final questions. Anyone? Josh?
Oh, me.
Carrie.
When you're talking early onset, like Alzheimer's, what is the like youngest age that people might experience or start to experience symptoms of Alzheimer's?
So I know there in China, like recently, there was a 19-year-old who got diagnosed, but that's not it. That's just, I think I just heard that. But I think it's like, it's usually around like 40 to 65 is like kind of the beginning. Like 40 is probably the youngest that we will see at the moment. There's a trend of early onset Alzheimer's going like younger and younger and younger. Wow. So it like even like 10 years ago, it was like 60 or 65. Like that's like the youngest, but now it's already to like 40, and so.
Okay, so if you were to give some advice to someone who maybe, say, has like Alzheimer's in their family and they're worried about a genetic factor, what advice would you give them?
Like you can't obviously do anything about genetics, you can't do anything about your aging. But the best thing to do is start with preventative measures. Continue with preventative measures like physical activity, diet, like really focus on your diet. I think that's the biggest one people can change at them like instantly kind of. But if you know that you have an unmodifiable risk factor, you should start with the modifiables right away. Like that's, I think, the biggest key takeaway, yeah.
Ms. Park, when you were in grade 6, Scott and I had an open house in North Vancouver, and you and your mom came, and you spoke so well, so clearly, so passionately about IPS and your experience here, that Scott and I were thinking maybe you should just take over. And today, seeing you 4 years later is really rewarding for me, and I'm sure for a lot of your teachers, because you have grown so much, and this presentation has been spot on. When I look for presentations that you're engaged and you were enthusiastic, you have your audience listening, great questions from the audience, so kudos to you guys for really listening to what Ms. Park was saying. I'm really, really impressed. So I would like to give you, with a nod from your advisors, yes, the news that you have met all the requirements of the Island Pacific School Masterworks program. So that was a great conclusion to our first day of Masterworks. You guys have knocked it out of the park, but tomorrow we have a lineup of more incredible Masterworks, and I want to just go through them for our online audience and also for everyone here. On day 2, tomorrow, Harper Chell will be speaking to us about sustainable food systems. At 10 o'clock, Manisha LaRoche will be taking a closer look, exploring the biology and impact of brain tumors, another neuroscientist out there.
Kiana Cook will be speaking at 11, talking about periods, poverty, and patriarchy, the triple threat to girls' education in East Africa. And then after lunch, Caleb Nancy will be speaking at 1 o'clock, Lights, Camera, Action. This is the movie that he made, and after he does his presentation, we will all be walking down to the new theater at the community center to watch his movie that he made. So, very exciting things happening in the next couple of days. Thank you for your attention, and we welcome you back tomorrow, same time.